What if the world's most powerful company just made a secret deal with America's biggest rival, directly boosting President Xi Jinping's master plan? Nvidia, the king of AI chips, just stepped onto a geopolitical chessboard. The move they made in China could redraw the map of global power forever. Truth be told, it all started with a flight plan. Not a military one, but a corporate one that might as well have been. When news broke that Jensen Huang, the leather jacket-clad CEO of Nvidia, was planning a trip to Beijing in mid-July 2025, it didn't just make headlines in the business section. It sent a jolt of electricity straight through the heart of Washington, D.C. It's a move on a global chessboard where the pieces are silicon chips and the prize is the future itself. For months, the air had been thick with tension. The United States and China were locked in what everyone was calling a tech Cold War. The battleground wasn't some remote island. It was the billion-dollar industry of semiconductors, the tiny, brilliant brains that power everything from your phone to the most advanced artificial intelligence. The U.S. government, under the CHIPS Act and a series of strict export controls, had drawn a clear line in the sand. The most powerful AI chips, like Nvidia's legendary H100 and A100 processors, were forbidden fruit for China. The official reason? National security. Washington's logic was simple. Giving China access to the most powerful AI is like handing over the blueprints for the next generation of weaponry, surveillance, and economic dominance. So, they put a leash on companies like Nvidia, telling them exactly how powerful the chips they sell to China could be. It was a technological quarantine. So, when Jensen Huang booked his ticket, Washington noticed. A bipartisan group of influential senators didn't just send a polite letter. They basically read him the Riot Act. According to a leaked memo, they warned Huang that his upcoming visit was deeply concerning and cautioned him against any deal that would undermine national security and the spirit of U.S. export controls. They were telling the king of the chip world to watch his step, that cozying up to Beijing could be seen as an act of defiance against his own country. It was a public warning shot, a clear message to Nvidia. Pick a side. Most people figured Huang would probably tone it down, maybe postpone the trip, or just do a few low-key meetings. But that's not what happened. A few days later, a new press alert went out. Jensen Huang would be holding a major media briefing in Beijing on the 16th of July. He wasn't backing down. He was doubling down. The world leaned in, wondering what on earth he was about to announce that was worth poking the American eagle right in the eye. The press conference in Beijing was a spectacle. The room was packed with journalists from all over the world, the air buzzing with speculation. What was this all about? Was Nvidia opening a new research center? Announcing a new partnership with a Chinese car company? When Jensen Huang walked on stage in his signature black leather jacket, he looked more like a rock star than a CEO on the verge of starting a geopolitical firestorm. He started with the usual talk about the power of AI to solve humanity's biggest problem-scaring diseases, fighting climate change, creating new forms of art. But then, he got to the main event. And it was a bombshell. Nvidia didn't just show up in Beijing to wave hello. They unveiled a daring new strategy for China, one so cunning it sent shockwaves through the tech world. Jensen Huang announced plans to ramp up sales of Nvidia's H20 AI chips, specifically designed to skirt U.S. export controls while still packing a punch. These chips, already greenlit by the U.S. government after Huang's charm offensive with President Trump, were Nvidia's answer to China's hunger for AI power. At first glance, the H20 seemed tame, its performance capped to meet Washington's strict rules, so race car throttled back to a modest purr. But here's the kicker, the move that had everyone whispering. Nvidia wasn't just selling chips, they were selling a vision. By pairing the H20 with their cutting-edge NVLink technology, Nvidia enabled Chinese firms to chain these chips together, creating AI clusters that could roar like a supercar. While each H20 stayed within the legal limits, together they could rival the power of restricted beasts like the H100. It was a masterstroke of ingenuity, a high-stakes gamble that danced right on the edge of US regulations. Nvidia hadn't broken the law, they'd outsmarted it, delivering China a path to AI dominance without crossing Washington's red line. In Beijing, however, the mood was one of pure triumph. For President Xi Jinping, this was more than just a business deal. It was a massive political victory. For years, his government has preached the gospel of technological self-sufficiency as central to China's national rejuvenation. The American sanctions were meant to cripple this ambition. But now, with Nvidia's deal, Xi could portray himself as the leader who outmaneuvered the Americans, securing the tools for China's future not through theft or force, but through clever, legitimate business. It was the perfect propaganda win, proving that China cannot be contained. But Huang wasn't done dropping bombshells. The real game changer came next. Nvidia was deepening its roots in China with a bold new Move research and development hub in Shanghai, a high-tech nerve center to fuel China's AI ambitions. This wasn't just a chip sale. It was a strategic play to embed Nvidia's expertise in the heart of the Chinese tech ecosystem. Partnering with local giants like Tencent and Alibaba, the facility would fine-tune AI solutions, leveraging Nvidia's H20 chips to power cutting-edge applications. In one audacious stroke, Huang hadn't just sold hardware, he'd positioned Nvidia as a cornerstone of China's AI future. It was a move that skirted the edges of America's technological blockade, giving Beijing a foothold in the global AI race without breaking Washington's rules. The dragon was stirring, and Nvidia was fanning its flames. How it works. The digital Lego brick strategy. To really get why this move is such a big deal, you have to understand a little bit about how these AI chips work. Think of a powerful AI chip like Nvidia's H100 as a genius, a single Albert Einstein who can solve incredibly complex problems all by himself. His brain is just built differently, capable of making connections and calculations at a speed that's almost impossible to comprehend. The US government basically said, "You cannot send any more Einsteins to China." So, what did Nvidia do? They created the D100 chip. Instead of a single Einstein, think of the D100 as a very smart college graduate. He's not a genius, but he's highly intelligent and capable. By himself, he can't solve the same kinds of problems as Einstein. The US export rules said, okay, sending smart college graduates is fine. But the trick was the dragon scale technology. Imagine you could take 10,000 of these smart college graduates, put them in a giant auditorium, and give them a way to talk to each other instantly, with no delays, as if they were all sharing one single mind. They could work together on a single, massive problem, each tackling a small piece of it. At the end of the day, this collective of 10,000 graduates could solve the problem just as fast, or maybe even faster, than the single Einstein. That's what Nvidia's deal did. They sold China the digital equivalent of smart Lego bricks, D100 chips, and the magic instruction manual, dragon scale architecture, on how to snap them together to build a castle that was just as grand as the one the US had banned. This move sidestepped the core idea behind the export controls. The US wanted to create a technological bottleneck to slow China down by denying them the most critical tools. But Nvidia, with its workaround, had effectively blasted that bottleneck wide open. They gave China a different path to the same destination: world-class AI computational power. This is why the deal isn't just a clever business move. It's a direct challenge to America's entire strategy for maintaining its technological edge. It was a move that was celebrated in Beijing as a triumph of innovation and condemned in Washington as a stunning betrayal. The reaction to Nvidia's announcement was immediate and explosive. The world, it seemed, split right down the middle. In Washington, the air crackled with outrage. Senators who'd fired a warning shot at Huang just days earlier were now seething, their fears of Nvidia cozying up to Beijing confirmed. On Capitol Hill, the bipartisan duo of Jim Banks and Elizabeth Warren took to the airwaves, slamming Nvidia's moves as a dangerous flirtation with America's rival. They didn't just want answers, they demanded action, hinting at tighter export controls to close any loopholes Nvidia might exploit. The message was unmistakable. Play with fire and you'll get burned. The White House, blindsided by Huang's boldness, stayed tight-lipped, but whispers swirled of a brewing response to safeguard national security. The American government was now in a very tough spot. If they did nothing, their entire export control strategy would look like a joke. But if they went after America's most important tech company, they risked shooting their own economy in the foot. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, the reaction was far more complicated. Many tech executives and engineers, speaking anonymously, expressed a kind of grudging admiration. It was, they admitted, a 200 IQ move. Nvidia was caught between a rock and a hard place. The demands of the US government on one side, and the lure of the billion-person Chinese market on the other. They couldn't afford to ignore either. This deal was seen as an almost impossibly clever way to thread that needle. It satisfied their shareholders by keeping the revenue flowing from China, while technically staying within the bounds of the law. But for others, it felt like a betrayal. Smaller AI startups and competitors who had been strictly following the rules felt like Nvidia had just used its size and power to cheat. They worried that this would create an uneven playing field, where giants like Nvidia could negotiate their own set of rules, while everyone else had to follow the strict letter of the law. It raised a fundamental question. Are giant tech companies now more powerful than nations? Across the globe, the shockwave spread. In Europe, leaders watched with deep anxiety. They were already struggling to keep up in the AI race, and this move threatened to accelerate a global split into two distinct tech spheres, one American, one Chinese. Where would that leave Europe? Would they be forced to choose a side or be left behind entirely? In Taiwan, home of TSMC, the silicon powerhouse crafting Nvidia's chips, the news landed like a quiet thunderclap. Caught in the crosshairs of US-China tensions, Taiwan faced a gut-wrenching dilemma. As a vital US ally, TSMC powers America's tech dominance, but Nvidia's deepening ties with China pushing H20 chips into Beijing's hands cast a shadow. Every chip etched in Taiwanese factories now carried a question. Was it fueling the AI ambitions of a rival across the strait? The island held its breath, navigating a tightrope between profit and danger. At the end of the day, Nvidia's deal didn't just create a business partnership. It drew new battle lines in the global tech war, forcing allies, rivals, and companies to question their loyalties and figure out where they stood in a rapidly changing world. So, why does this all matter? Why does a deal about tiny silicon chips cause such a massive international panic? To understand the fear in the halls of the Pentagon and the White House, you have to think about what this kind of AI power can actually do in the hands of a strategic rival. This isn't about China building a better video game or a funnier chatbot. This is about the very foundations of national power in the 21st century. First, let's talk about the military. Modern warfare is rapidly becoming a contest of algorithms. The country with the smartest AI will have a terrifying advantage. Imagine swarms of intelligent drones that can coordinate an attack without any human intervention, or AI systems that can sift through satellite imagery and communications to predict an enemy's move before they even make it. Or consider hypersonic missiles that use AI to make split-second adjustments, making them nearly impossible to shoot down. This is the stuff of military planners' dreams and their nightmares. By providing the computational power for developing and training these next-generation systems, Nvidia's deal is seen by many in the US defense community as directly arming an adversary. Second, there's the economic battlefield. The AI revolution is being compared to the Industrial Revolution. It's not just another new technology. It's a technology that will transform every other industry, from medicine and manufacturing to finance and logistics. The nation that leads in AI will likely lead the global economy for the next century. They will invent the new products, own the new platforms, and set the new standards. The US strategy of restricting AI chips was a deliberate attempt to slow China's economic ascent and preserve America's own innovative edge. Nvidia's Dragon chip deal is seen as pouring gasoline on China's economic engine. Now, there is the issue of social control and surveillance. It's no secret that China has built the world's most sophisticated domestic surveillance system. More powerful AI means more powerful tools for social control. It means facial recognition systems that never make a mistake, AI that can monitor the entire internet for dissenting opinions in real time, and predictive policing algorithms that identify potential troublemakers before they act. For human rights advocates, giving the Chinese government access to a supercharged AI infrastructure is a moral catastrophe in the making. When you put it all together, the picture becomes clear. From Washington's perspective, Nvidia didn't just sell a product, they sold a capability. They sold the raw power needed to build a future that could directly challenge American military, economic, and ideological leadership. It was a single business deal that touched on the deepest fears and anxieties of a superpower worried about its place in the world. It's not just about chips anymore, it's about destiny. So what was Jensen Huang thinking? Is he a greedy CEO who betrayed his country for a buck, or a visionary leader playing a different, longer game? The truth is probably somewhere in between, and it reveals the incredible pressure facing global corporations today. If you were to hear Jensen's side of the story, he would likely argue that he is a pragmatist, not a traitor. His first responsibility, he would say, is to his company, his employees, and his shareholders. China accounts for a massive 13% of Nvidia's revenue, a multi-billion-dollar lifeline that Jensen Huang cannot afford to ignore. Simply walking away from a market of that size is corporate game over. It would crater the company's stock price and hand a massive opportunity to competitors like Intel or AMD, who would be more than happy to rush in and fill the void. He would also argue that he is, in fact, following the rules. "Show me the law we broke," he might say. His engineers brilliantly designed a product that fit perfectly within the box drawn by the US Commerce Department. Is it his fault that the box was poorly designed? He would frame it as innovation, not evasion. Now, he might make a more philosophical argument. A tech Cold War, he could claim, ultimately hurts everyone. Cutting off collaboration and forcing the world into two separate, hostile technology camps, a US-led one and a China-led one, will slow down progress for all of humanity. It could lead to a splinternet, where data and ideas can no longer flow freely, hindering scientific research and global cooperation on issues like climate change and pandemics. Perhaps, in his mind, keeping the lines of communication and commerce open, even in a limited way, is a better strategy for managing tensions than building a silicon curtain across the Pacific. But the risks of this gambit are enormous. The unintended consequences could be catastrophic for Nvidia. The US government has a very big stick. They could hit Nvidia with crippling fines. They could tighten export controls even further, making the new Dragon chips illegal overnight and destroying the entire venture. In a worst-case scenario, they could even target Nvidia's own supply chain, restricting its access to the manufacturing facilities in Taiwan that are the lifeblood of its business. Jensen may think he outsmarted the government, but he may have just dared them to bring the hammer down. Even if Nvidia escapes government punishment, they may have created their own future monster. By providing China with a powerful AI infrastructure, they are helping to train a generation of Chinese AI engineers. They are accelerating the day when China's own domestic chip companies, like Huawei's HiSilicon, will be good enough to compete directly with Nvidia. In a few years, China may not need Nvidia's workaround chips anymore, because they'll have learned enough to build their own. Jensen's clever deal might have bought him a few years of revenue, but it may have cost him a decade of market dominance. Is Nvidia a business genius or a national security traitor? The line is blurred. Like this video, subscribe for more on this high-stakes game, and drop your verdict below.